So, what's up, man? How you doing?
Hey, pretty good. It's cool to be finally talking to you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I have a few people I think that are in. I think I have a few people that like are in your audience, and but they're like followers of mine, and they've been pushing me to talk to you for a while. But I don't have that much stuff that I like disagree with you on, and
Mhm.
so I didn't know what to talk about. But I've been getting into your content a little. Oh yeah, I guess I first wanted to say I wanted to compliment you on how handsome you are.
Oh,
I thought
thank.
that was appropriate.
Yeah, I knew it was gonna happen. That's why I put
Yeah.
it in there. Thank
Uh,
you. You too, man. You're pretty
yeah.
handsome yourself. You're not a bad looking guy.
Thanks, man. Love the twerking videos. I guess yeah, I've been going through your some of your stuff, and like, one of the things I thought was interesting was the Brandon Bernard situation. And I agree with like, I
I,
agree with a lot of.
I I know
Oh, go
it's
ahead.
it's the biggest point of contention for a lot of people when it came to my content. Sure, you can go ahead. This, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I agree actually with a lot of what you said, like most of it actually. One of the things I thought was really interesting though is it seemed like you said, like as far as people not being able to be like reformed, it seemed like
yeah.
you had
It's
a pretty strong opinion about people who are murderers or are very complicit with murders.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Because a lot of people they got like very upset about that. I think that was a huge point to them. That was like, oh, you don't care about reform. To me, it gets to a point where reformation is like a relevant thing, right? So, like to me, once you do something like you're complicit with murder, or you're a murderer, or you molest a child, I think that you're kind of beyond reform. You're beyond a point where like I feel comfortable putting you back into society. And to me, reformation would be with the intent of either putting you back into like general population of a prison, or actually into like society, because you're going to obviously put murderers into like their own like isolated situation. So in that case, yeah, I don't care about that reform in that particular situation. Overall, like I absolutely care about reform. But yeah, no, I think that there's a certain point, even if you don't believe in the death penalty, like there's a certain point where you get
Mhm.
where it's like, I don't feel comfortable putting murderers into society or back with other people in prison, because those people don't deserve to die. And also, just for context, like I brought this up a few times, but like there's obviously different types of murder. Like if you have a heat in the moment murder where somebody punches your wife in the face and you just maul them to death, that's justifiable to me enough to not warrant you even going to jail. But like obviously in this situation, this was a gang related murder, so
Right. Yeah, and see, I agree to an extent. One of the things I think is interesting though is that like I am like actually pro death penalty to an extent. Maybe not in like our current system because our current judicial system is kind of crap. But I think there is a lot of studies that show that like how like reform for people who are murderers, it actually is they have one of the lowest recidivism. I think it's lowest recidivism. How do you say it?
yeah, recidivism.
Recidivism.
Yeah. Well, what's so?
And
Do you know
so
what the percentage is?
it varies depending, but there's a few studies, like there's this one, and I think this still varies from other ones, but like it was like there's a study that this woman did, I think like Illinois University or whatever, and it was like 988 convicted murders, and it was like over a 20-year period, and like 1% of them, only 1% was arrested for new crimes, 10% was arrested for violating parole,
Mm-hmm.
and then none of them were rearrested for murder.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I think I would still disagree that like I think some murders you definitely can be like reformed and put back into society. It's
Sure.
just it's a big job of like trying to figure out who can and who can't, right?
Well, yeah, and I think that's why I made the distinction between like
Right.
a gang related murder and like some like there are murders that you can be reformed by, like I can, like I said, like heat of the moment type of a situation. I mean, I guess you maybe call it manslaughter, but I don't think that like
Mhm.
premeditated murder is something that I would ever feel comfortable
Sure.
because I know that there still is a rate of reentry. I don't know how many of those people is due to like a murder. I also don't know how closely watched these individuals are when they're on parole. I would say, as like a general rule of thumb, though, I'm more comfortable with like full life in prison than I am with releasing like violent murderers, especially ones that are gang related.
Sure. But even with people who are like complicit with murder, you still have a pretty strong position. Or is that accurate or no?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, sure. I mean, like in this situation, it's like a gang-related murder, so
Right.
yeah, I think that like if he hadn't gotten arrested, I mean, we don't really know
Mhm.
how far down like whatever gang pipeline he was going to continue to go. I mean, he got caught. and then he went to jail, and I know he turned his life around. But like, it's very easy to make the argument like, hey, I turned my life around when I'm being watched 24/7, and like I
Sure.
literally can't not turn my life around. You know?
Yeah, sure. And the idea, I think, would be like, hopefully if we like had a better judicial system, and like people like that, we could actually figure out if they actually are reformed and like can go back into society or whatever.
Sure. I would just say as like a rule of thumb, like I wouldn't feel comfortable with that individual going back into society, specifically
Okay.
Brandon Bernard. Yeah.
Interesting. All right. There was one other thing, or something else specifically with that, but I guess the Call Me Carson. I know I was watching your stream right before.
It's so funny because somebody's talking about Romeo and Juliet laws in California, and I just want to, just since you brought it up right at the perfect time, Romeo and Juliet laws are the worst in California. Mm-hmm. The worst. Okay, so you guys are like, oh, it doesn't exist. It does exist. So in most states, Romeo and Juliet laws are like, hey, listen, if you're within a 4-year age gap and the person's over 14, it's technically legal. In California, it's up to the judge's discretion whether you're a sexual predator or whether you're actually being a sexual predator, as long as there's a 10-year age gap from the ages like 14 and up. So if you're 14 and sleeping with a 24-year-old, you could be considered not guilty. So far, all we know is that when he was 19, he sexed a 17-year-old. He wouldn't get shit for that.
Mm-hmm. I've looked in the California ones, and I don't like those ones whatsoever.
Those are rough, right?
Yeah, but as far as that situation, I still do you still think that like it could have been like a bad situation? Because it seems like you like have a good idea of like, we should have like a bit of leeway when it comes to like age of consent laws. But like even with that, do you think they're like, personally, I think it could be still a problem because there's like an unbalanced power dynamic where he is like,
sure,
this big streamer or whatever. But
yeah, okay. So I guess we'll split into two things. We'll talk about the age, and then we'll talk about the power dynamic because he's famous. Okay. Right. So when it comes to age, it's like a very finicky kind of a thing. Right now, what is socially and legally acceptable overall is like a 4-year age gap. As we get older, that age gap is going down, which I think is like a good thing. I think it's kind of gross that, an 18-year-old would fuck a 14-year-old. I think 2 years is more acceptable for minors socially. Legally, maybe we should get there. But since, it's hard to do, though, because then there's other counter arguments, and it's like atmosphere arguments. So if you're just a kid in high school, not even a kid in the same high school as another kid, but if you're an 18-year-old in high school, mentally, you are more a child than an 18-year-old who is actually out in the work field because of the people who you're interacting with. So I can understand why an 18-year-old, it's weird, but why an 18-year-old and 14-year-old would find like levels of like comfort with each other because they're both in the same headspace because they're both in the same environment. But like I said, but if you're an 18-year-old working with like 50-year-olds and like actually in the actual workforce, you're going to be more mature, and it's going to be very different. And that's why like I understand the 4-year age gap because those people are in a scenario together, but I also think it's kind of gross at the same time. It's uncomfortable. Since it's legal, most people like will focus on the legality of it. Like Tony Lopez made sure that he talked to like 16-year-olds plus because it was the age of consent in his state and it was a 4-year age gap. Is it like gross? Yeah. Is it illegal? No. I wouldn't call these people predators. I would say that if we're going to have the conversation, we should be having a societal conversation about changing those age dynamics rather than trying to label people predators. Because Tony Lopez isn't a predator. Tony Lopez is somebody who was just like following the law and like he was cutting it close. But I would assume if we're going to give people the benefit of the doubt, and I do believe in like due process, you would imagine that if it wasn't legal to talk to 16-year-olds, that people wouldn't talk to 16-year-olds, right? To the power dynamic thing, that gets a little tricky because if we make a blanket term that anybody who's in a position of power over anybody else is predatory instantly, I think that's really toxic. That means that like if you're rich and you're dating a girl who doesn't have a lot of money, that means that you're a predator because money is a power dynamic. I think there's a difference between being famous and more equitable as an individual and more dateable because people would want to talk to you because you're rich. That's different than somebody leveraging their power as a rich person to get what they want. So if he was like, hey, I'm Call Me Not Carson, or Call Me Carson, right? That's we got the wrong one.
I think so.
Yeah, Call Me Carson. If you show me your tits, I can help you become a big YouTube star. That's predatory. But if he's just like, hey, what's up? I'm Call Me Carson. Want to see my dick? That's okay. To an extent, he earned his place amongst like being famous. So I think that we have like a delicate line between like what makes somebody more equitable and what makes somebody a predator based on like that kind of a power dynamic.
Yeah, sure. I'll start with the power dynamic thing.
Hmm?
I think no, I agree. I agree with you that like if we just label anyone who's like trying to get in a relationship as someone who has an audience, I think that's pretty toxic. But that's why I think it could be a bad power dynamic. But
Could
at
be.
least from the chats I've seen, it doesn't look like that way.
What
But like I
chats have you
guess
seen? Do you have any of them?
there were a few videos I watched where like they were talking. They were leaked not by him, but like by the
Sure.
people who
Did they give
who
any ages of these people?
from what I understand, everyone that they knew of was 17.
Yeah, so
And then at the time anyway, but then
yeah, when he was like 19, right?
exactly.
So fucking stupid.
I I know. And then of course these girls went to Twitter and were like, I think they, maybe this is a little misinterpreted, but it seemed like they were coming out with like this super victim mentality, being like, oh my gosh,
Well,
Carson.
yeah. Well, see, but
Mhm.
that's the thing is that if we start, and that's one of the harms of just saying that, hey, because somebody's famous, that means that they have this like power dynamic over somebody. Because now Carson is getting shit for something that it seems like he didn't do at all.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, but he's famous. It's like, well, we gotta take it a step back and like go like, okay, what's the line? Like, if you're somebody leveraging your power to get somebody to sleep with you, you're like you're exhibiting predatory behavior. But if you're just famous because like you are more, basically you'd be more equitable to society than somebody who's not, and people want to fuck you. Like that's just kind of the way life is. People are generally attracted to success, especially women are more attracted to success. Like it's okay. It's not like a sexist thing, but like, you can't be like, oh, I want to talk to this guy and be like, I kind of regret it. But then also how much do we know? It's like, well, I just want to be engaged in a scandal. And then you have a 38-year-old man like Keemstar, like pushing this whole thing that like Carson is a predator while like trying to make it seem like he's like middle grounded, but he's like a really worthless piece of shit. Like I know that he already got like some old man like canceled for being a predator. And now he's going after Carson because he's desperate for content. Like it's honestly pathetic.
Yeah, Keemstar is the worst.
Oh yeah.
But I guess no, I agree with all of that. And then I actually, as far as like the like age of consent laws specifically, I agree that like 2 years sounds a lot better than 4 years. The thing I think a little differently, or at least I think about it a little differently than like you, is that like I agree that like someone who's 18 and still in high school probably has a different maturity level than someone who's like or 17, sorry, in high school. Probably has a different maturity level than someone like is 19 and that is actually in college or the workforce or something.
Sure.
But I don't know. It feels like once I got past that age, I started to realize like, oh my gosh, both ages, I was really, really stupid, not mature like at all. And so I feel like perspective, it feels a little bit better than maybe like it seems on the surface. But I could totally see that.
Like the situation between Carson and the girls he's talking to.
Yeah.
No, I do too. No, I think that like. Listen, I remember growing up, I was like, wow, I was really fucking stupid. Like every like last, I'd say like, yeah, I was really stupid last year. Every year up until like 25, and even now I look back and go, wow, I've grown a lot. But like, yeah, it takes a while to fully develop. And a 17, 19-year-old is like,
that's nothing. Yeah,
it's such nothing. It's like it's literally where I would be like comfortable with. Like I start getting uncomfortable. Like 19 and 16 makes me uncomfortable, but it's legal. 19 and 15 really is incredibly uncomfortable, but like it's legal. I hate that it's legal. But we have to like justify it based on that. But he's not even like hitting those points of like nuance. It's like, yeah, she's 17, I'm 19, and like what blows my mind about the situation was like, I don't know. The story doesn't really add up to me when it came to the kids. When it came to like the other people he was talking to, he's like, "Oh, I was talking to my like." How did that conversation come about? Carson just called people up one day. He's like, "Yo, guys, I'm talking to minors," and then give me a high five. It's like, wow, what? Like, it sounds more like he was bragging that he was talking to people, and maybe he mentioned their age, and they were like, "Oh, that's weird because we're dumb." I don't know. It's weird. It doesn't make any sense. It really just seems like whoever these two people are, like, desperate for attention.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I was watching the Keemstar thing, unfortunately, and I was really annoyed with how they brought it up because it doesn't make sense. I've never heard of anyone having a conversation where it's like, "Hey, bro, you know how I'm 19, right? I had this relationship."
Hey, I was fucking with this minor.
Yeah, but
who says that shit?
No, but Oh man, there was something else in there I was gonna say, but
Well, hold on. Somebody said it's most of the power dynamic of the fan interaction. Even if you think that's true, none of that was brought up by Keemstar. Not a singular time. So like that's the problem. So like let's say Keemstar was actually intelligent and he was like, hey, you know, there's an inappropriate power dynamic between like fans and like celebrities. Now I would generally disagree, like was what we just talked about, but like he didn't even bring that up. He literally was just like, oh, minors? What age were they? Oh, we don't know. Oh, okay, well let's keep pushing the story as if it's a fact. That's irresponsible, and what I fucking hate. It's one of the things that like it's pretty consistent on my platform. I fucking hate people who just rampantly label people predators, because like being a child molester or a predator is like the one of the worst things you could ever do. And like I hate people who are predatorized children. And so like when you do that, like a lot of people are willing to get very violent with child predators. And so you don't just rampantly run around and label people something where like they can get seriously hurt or ruined. You ruin your whole career with that, because it's a very like people hate child predators more than they hate murderers. Like that's where we are. So you don't just go around calling somebody a child predator without like actual evidence.
Right. And I don't think Keemstar understands like what nuance is, and it feels like
No, I don't at all.
It felt a little disingenuous, or it felt like a little sneaky the way those two guys were talking about it on Keemstar's thing, because it feels like they knew how old these girls were, but they never said it. They were just talking about it.
Because they said they were like, well, did you know how old they were? Well, not at the time. So tell us now. Also, it's 17 and 19 is not illegal. It's not a felony. It's not a felony in California. It's up to the judge's discretion. There's a 10-year age gap up to the judge's discretion. There's no way the judge is going to be like, yeah, 17 and 19, that's predatory. No. There are judges who will say, oh, 14 and 24, well, that's okay. It's not okay. But like California has the worst Romeo and Juliet laws ever. So it isn't illegal what he did at all. Now, maybe the only thing that you got is maybe the illicit pictures are illegal. Yes, that makes sense. But like that's one of those things where like I'm not trying to be an asshole, but I don't care if a 17 and 19-year-old are sending each other illicit pictures. Like I just don't give a shit. You know, like it is technically like distribution of like, you know, child material, but like it's not like, you know, it's not like he's selling it to people. He's not like he's like, hey, Papa Gut, you're 30. You want to see this 7? No, he's not doing that. That would be disgusting. It's a 17-year-old and a 19-year-old.
Right. Is it not I thought it could be a misdemeanor at most though, right? Or maybe that's wrong. Maybe that's other states.
When what?
The if like it's a 17 and 19-year-old, it's not illegal, but it could be like a misdemeanor, I think.
It could be like what in California you're talking about specifically?
I think so, but
it could be like, but like I said, like it would be up to the judge's discretion, and like at this point we're speculating, but I guarantee you the judge is not going to like.
Probably not. No.
You know what I mean? Like they're gonna be like, oh, 17, 19, like whatever.
Yeah, but all the like as far as like the actual age of consent stuff, it's really aggravating from both sides, because it feels like a lot of people make fun of like it being as like a libertarian talking point, but it's I think it is like something that could be talked about, especially in other states that you know aren't as, you know, crazy as California is.
Right. Well, even his home state, Illinois or Indiana, age of consent 16, which is it's still gross, but it makes it legal.
Mm-hmm. That's all I had. That's all I had for that. But I guess there was a few other things. One of the things I wanted to talk about, I thought was pretty interesting, was abortion.
Sure.
You talked about this a few times, and like I think you did like a review of Tyler's and Victoria's debate.
Yeah, I'm hosting another debate between the two of them at some point.
If it works out, I've been seeing the drama.
It's gonna work out. I've talked to them both privately. Like they're both down for it. It's gonna happen. Yeah.
Cool. I'm excited. Yeah, it's stuff's spicy, interesting, but
yeah, for sure.
It seems like I know you talked about it a few times, and you talked about how like you're pro-choice on policy, which I would be too. But I'm interested, as far as morally, where would you stand? Because it seems like you said it's pretty. At least abortion seems to be pretty gross.
Yeah, I think abortion is like, to me, like it's a necessary evil. My main reason that I'm like, okay, I'm pro-choice is because I think that like our general way of life of like empathetic welfare programs and like systems to be able to catch people from like sinking into poverty are 100% necessary. I think they've been a net positive for society, and I think that like you can directly correlate our types of like welfare programs to success in society, right? And so if we have, like, let's say 800 to 900,000 babies being aborted a year in the United States alone, let's say that if we made abortion illegal and it drops to 40,000, that's 40,000 more people on top of the already normal number that are going to be on welfare programs to some extent, whether they're in foster care, whether they have like some kind of subsidy from the government. And it's like a tough thing to talk about, but at that point we're going to like heavily tax and stress the system. And like one of the things so we'd have to end up reversing our welfare programs and then letting people suffer a very harsh worldview where like you're born and then you suffer until you die. And so it's one of those things where like abortion to me is a way of like implementing population control that's purely based on choice, because any implementation of population control from like a legal perspective, it gets very, very, very quickly I don't know, bad. It's not exactly the greatest word I could use, but it can get like really. I mean, it gets really bad really quickly. And so, like the idea of like, okay, listen, if you have like some kind of socioeconomic issue and you want to abort your child, I understand. Is it fucked up? Absolutely. But like, you know, we're having a conversation about population control usually within the first trimester. We're not talking about killing babies who are born. We're talking about you know, a potential human life that hasn't nearly developed, hasn't developed the ability to feel pain or have any like level of critical thought. And we just say, okay, for the most part, it's like the first trimester. There are second trimesters. I can understand it. It's before they develop pain. Third trimester is generally reserved for like serious situations, which I'm okay with. Like if the mother's life is going to be threatened, then I'm okay with you getting an abortion. I think it gets a little finicky with some of the wording, because sometimes the wording suggests that like mental health as well, which can be very loose, and you can end up aborting somebody simply because you don't feel like having them and you just decided to go too late. But generally speaking, I think we're generally okay with where we are with our abortion laws, and I think it's like a net positive. There's obviously issues of like I don't know if I'd go with necessarily body autonomy. Like if it wouldn't bankrupt society, I would be fine with being pro-life, but I do still think that women should be able to be the ones that have the ultimate choice, because you're the ones carrying it. I could still understand that, like at the end of the day, and I hate the normalization of abortion, but like if you pull out and come on a woman's stomach, it's effectively the same thing as getting an abortion. And also, I haven't heard anybody give me like a solid argument to if there's a soul or not, like proof that there's a soul. If you could prove to me that there was like a soul that would be damned to hell if you aborted it, I'm pro-life instantly. That's all it takes. All God has to do is come down and say, hey, and I'm done. I'm instantly pro-life. That's all it really takes. But, we don't have those sets of circumstances there.
Yeah. Okay. I'll start with the soul thing.
Yeah, so I know I threw out a lot of information.
Sorry, no, I got you. I know it's I mean, I guess. In the context of Christianity, since you did say God, I think that is, at least the Bible kind of talks about that. But I don't want to get into like a super Christian argument or whatever.
That's totally fine.
No, yeah, but as far as morally speaking, and like what you were talking about there, like I think there is pretty good arguments to say that like it should be, because that was the other thing you said, is because like effectively you seem that like if the guy pulls out and then on the stomach there, it's essentially
you're wasting the sperm and egg.
Yeah, true. But would you actually consider it the same thing as an abortion?
No, I wouldn't say the same thing. I think it's the same outcome as abortion. Oh, and because because we don't have the factor of like objective proof that there's like a soul that would be damned to hell with that, like by aborting. I support abortion like up until, again, like first trimester is usually where I feel most comfortable with it.
Yeah, same here. I feel like we can pretty much determine that like the chances of it having a soul as a fetus is much more likely than if it's just a sperm, right? Then it comes into the conversation like, so when does the soul enter? Right.
That's when it comes to like when does the soul enter the body?
Right. And then I guess that's where I start to come in, like pro-life, and like I think that like I think you can make a really good argument as far as like, because it is a human life, at least that's what we understand from biology right now.
Sure.
And then you can, even if it doesn't have like sentience or whatever, all these other things, I think you can still make a pretty good argument that like the potentiality for personhood or social contract or any of these things, I think is still pretty important. You can base a pro-life argument off of that. And so that kind of makes me wonder like, if we ever got to a place in society where we like, oh, because this is one of the other like policy positions I would have on this is like we should probably do free contraceptives because that would actually lower the number of abortions quite a bit. And so if we could get that number down, right? If we could get that number down, and then we have like in the future, like more things to like our what would you call it? Like more resources available. Do you think like you would be okay with trying to convert to a more pro-life society?
Okay, so you're saying that if we got to a point where we like had wider spread uses of contraceptives and whatnot, like freer resources, I imagine when we have some kind of like a universal healthcare system, maybe. Yeah. I mean, I don't know that it would really be necessary. I mean, we could. I don't know if it would necessarily be necessary. Sure, though. I mean, if it was fine with society, I don't think that I don't know that making abortion illegal it would ever be a net positive for society. I think at that point when so like I say, we get to the point where we heavily mitigate the number of abortions that we're having, and then we're like, hey, let's be pro-life. Let's be pro-life now. Like, does it have a benefit on society, or does it just make people feel better?
Right. Well, I mean, I guess in a way you could say both, right? Because technically, if the society thinks it's like morally wrong to have abortion, and our laws are supposed to like reflect our morals, then I would say like kind of both. Like it makes us feel better because it's morally wrong and we're like making it illegal, but also like hopefully it could be a net positive because we have the resources to provide for these women that like otherwise wouldn't have it in our current society. If that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like maybe in this, I don't know if we get there. Sure, I guess it's like a conversation to have once we get there. But yeah, maybe.
Yeah, sure.
It's definitely not something that I've flushed out. It's definitely not something that I've like super flushed out as a talking point. If that makes sense,
Yeah, no, I got you. I was just curious.
So are you pro-life or are you pro-life or pro-choice or?
Oh no, I would say like as far as like short term, I would call myself pro-choice. Like I would advocate for like probably like an X amount of weeks ban because like we should be like making sure that like it doesn't get too far late into the pregnancy. I think that's pretty gross, and I think most people recognize it. I think it's like 87% or something like that.
I think that most people have to recognize that I think that there's a very small amount of people that are like, yeah, I love late term abort. Like I just know
late term, yeah. And so I think making like a cutoff, I think is pretty fair, and then free contraceptives. I think at least short term, that's what I would advocate for, and then hopefully I would still be like long term. I would say I'm pro-life. Like I think this is wrong. I think hopefully we could get to a society where we like kind of recognize that, or at least that's what I feel. I feel like it would be like a good thing for us to try and implement.
That could be nice. Yeah. Okay. Let me ask you. I'm debating on asking like a question. As people are gonna go fucking nuts. Okay. So what? Now I'm just curious. I'm just in a mood. Somebody mentioned it before. So what's your perspective on potentially aborting children that are going to come out with like serious disabilities, like Down syndrome, for instance?
Oof. Okay. So yeah, that's a good question because and I've actually gotten questions kind of similar to this because one of the things like a lot of what I try to like base my my political philosophy on is like a social contract, specifically more like within a Rawlsian social contract, but basically the arguments kind of thrown at me sometimes is like, well, if you believe in a social contract, you believe humans are valuable because of the social contract, then you would have to agree that like there are certain people that cannot engage in that social contract, so they're not worth saving, right?
Right, yeah, that's a hard way to say it, but I understand. Sure,
yeah. Maybe I said that a little.
No. I understand what you're saying. We're gonna flush it out anyway. I know that like it sounds harsh, but I know exactly what you mean. I tend to agree. Yeah, keep going. Go on.
Yeah. And so, okay. And so, like, basically, I would say that, like, at least for me, because this is the system that I try to work from, I would say that, like, for most of these types of people who have these types of disabilities, I think for the most part, we can pretty much distinguish who can engage in a social contract, at least to a certain extent. Like, there's people with autism that, like, even if they like, can't read social cues that well or whatnot, they can still live in a society in a pretty, fairly.
I would say that, like, generally speaking, like very high functioning autistic people who can contribute to society are like outliers to people with autism. But I understand what you're saying. Okay. Like, I don't think that there's a way. I don't even know if you can identify autism in the womb. because once you're born, you're born. Like, I don't. It doesn't matter if you're
true, yeah.
a 3-armed
Right.
like spider creature. Like you're alive.
Right. And so like, if we ever got like a situation where like people are just like, there's like someone who's like totally ridiculously cannot, that they can't like functions in society, then maybe I'd think about it. But like you said, like most of these cases we don't even know until like after they're out of the womb. And so, at that point it's like
I
let them, kind of just kind of let them live. Unless like, I don't know, they're like a severe destruction to society. But I haven't thought about that as much. So maybe you have an opinion on that?
What, like, it's like, I mean, I guess people would call it eugenics. Yeah. So, okay. It's a hard conversation to have because, I don't ever think that we should ever have any form of like government mandate that says, hey, if your baby has this disease or something, or this specific disorder, that's what they're going to come out, you should be able to get rid of them. Like, no, or you should have to. I would never say that. I think that like I am okay with people aborting their child, obviously in the womb, if they have something like Down syndrome. It's a tough conversation because if we went with like a rougher, like traditional, like worldview where the survival of the fittest existed, people with Down syndrome would come out and they wouldn't be able to like survive because they wouldn't really be able to be equipped to like handle the things. Most people with Down syndrome, there are people, of course, who could function, but most people with Down syndrome wouldn't be able to function, and they'd end up like dying. And like I said before, we have like fantastic social programs to help us. Help people who have like unfortunate life situations. So to that, I think I would say, yeah, I think that you should be able to like abort a child if they have like Down syndrome or something, because like they're going to be, unfortunately, like a net drain on society, right? Like they're going to have like a tremendous amount of resources. They're going to have to go to people with Down syndrome to help them survive. Like we have, like it's just a thing. Like there are people's entire careers decentralized around it. Now you can make the argument like, yeah, that gives people fulfilling careers. Definitely a decent argument. Some people with Down syndrome can work, but then also the amount of resources that were like, they're not paying the amount of taxes that would pay. Like they're not that minimum wage 20-hour a week job. They're not paying off the however many tens of thousands of dollars a month they cost or whatever. But yeah, I think it should be okay for you to like, yeah, get an abortion based on like your kid coming out with some kind of an issue. People talk about eugenics. I don't think that that's like a eugenicist perspective. I'm not talking about like going around and like mass killing people. Specifically talking about at that cutoff point of abortion, allowing you to potentially make the choice. I also think that we should invest into technologies that would be able to, I don't know, like some kind of gene manipulation that would be able to like prevent a lot of these things in the first place. I don't know if that's possible, but I think that's a better way to go. But like, it's just one of those things where like we want to be nice, but like life is really brutal. It's really tough, and like there's never like, and on these situations, there's not like yes, this is the absolute right way to go. Like you're going to have a negative with anything that you do, and these negatives happen to be very like the negatives and positives, the pros and cons happen to be so close in this particular situation that like it's a touchy topic.
Yeah. And like I said, I think it's a touchy topic, and so like that's why I probably haven't thought about it as much. But yeah, I think I would agree if they are like severe enough. Maybe for me it'd be they'd have to be a little more severe than maybe you, or at least it sounds that way.
Well,
I would be okay with it.
Yeah, but I don't know if you can judge the severity of something when they're in the womb, because like if you have a kid with Down syndrome that's born, I don't think that you can judge severity. I think you just get hey, they have Down syndrome. Or they're going to. So like at that point, like I'm fine with it. Like because like once, like I said, like once they're born, like I'm not gonna be like, yeah, Down syndrome looks severe, throw them away. Like no, that's this person's born, and they deserve whatever like social support that they need to get. But so like it's one of those things where like you're kind of rolling the dice in the womb.
Yeah. And I actually didn't know I don't know exactly like how like you can tell like if they have that or whatever, so I didn't know if like you could tell if it was severe enough or whatever.
I don't know. I mean you might be able to. I don't think you can, but like I could be wrong. But I know that you could tell in the womb.
I was just assuming. But yeah. I still have some other topics, but like if you have like any like questions as well, like you can go ahead and like raise them. Like that was a really good one.
Go ahead. You can ask whatever.
I was also a little interested on like some UBI stuff because like I haven't heard much about this until like Gang came around.
Yeah, that's when I heard about it as well, like 2016.
Yeah, I got really interested in it, and I was like, possibly. But then at the time, I was like super conservative Republican, so like everyone I knew was like you know, Matt, you don't know what you're talking about. That guy's a Democrat. So
Yeah,
but
right.
so one of the things I agree with as far as UBI goes, as opposed to like welfare, is that like it isn't restrictive. Like if you get a job, whereas like welfare can be like they can cut it off if you get a job or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But it's always there, so it kind of like incentivizes you to like go get more money. But however, like one of the things I heard you say was like that it gives you the freedom of choice. But I feel like, couldn't this be a bad thing when we're talking about people who are like bad at prioritizing like their finances? Sure. And so like I guess the question there would be like, would you also support like things like public option healthcare because these people are bad at like prioritizing
wait,
finances, or what?
So in like my worldview, like I have a single payer, I have like probably like Medicare for all with a private option intact with like a UBI, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I'm like UBI, Medicare for all plus. Like I always make sure that I bring up that there's like a private option.
Okay. Yeah. Wait. When you say Medicare for all, you're saying like
I want like a public option that's like inexpensive and available for everybody who needs it, as well as anybody who wants to opt in based on their wages, but then also a private option for people who want to spend more money on better insurance.
Okay. Yeah. No, I agree. Actually, what talking about that specifically, what's your opinion on like the ACA? Just curious.
What, the American healthcare? It's rough. I think that like the biggest flaw of it is that it tries to subsidize private insurers to do something that a public insurer like would be better at. Like, so my biggest thing is like, okay, my biggest problem or one of the things I think would be great is a public government run healthcare would be in direct competition with private run healthcare in a way where, like, you know, right now the private healthcare industry like controls the public market basically, so just like kind of shit all. But like if we can expand the public market out, then you have like a solid like a public option that would like anybody could opt into. You're gonna see drops in prices in like private insurance, and they're gonna be better. I think the two should be able to compete with each other. Right now, I don't think there's a fair shake. I like the heart of like the American Healthcare Act. I think it was like a step in the right direction.
Yeah,
but
no, I agree.
We need to get to a point where we have like just streamlined like a public healthcare option. Obviously, you're going to increase taxes, public healthcare option, and that you would pay based on not only like a tax increase, but also if you wanted to opt into it, pay based on your wages. If you're poor, you have no wages to really pay. If you're middle class, you pay a little bit more, and then you get that public option that's going to be overall cheaper than a private option. But then if you want to spend extra money in like better healthcare, like sure, I just think that healthcare should provide like a pretty basic, like, hey, you should be able to go to the doctor, get medication, go to the hospital, preventative healthcare, and then like, yeah, whatever you would consider better, maybe like, I don't know, vision or something. I don't really care, but you know what I mean? Like, and then you can opt into like a private healthcare field.
Yeah, that was one of the issues. I thought came about with the ACA is that like it felt like for poorer people who don't like have that much of a wage, they're like having to still pay for these options here. I know like I have a few people I know that like are on the ACA, and it's like it's a little cheaper, but man, it like is not close enough. You know,
I think it depends on the state too, because like my fiance is on Medicare for all or whatever, not Medicare for like Obamacare. She pays like nothing at all.
Really?
Yeah, so it's great. It's great for her. But then, of course, and I don't have healthcare right now, but when I had healthcare, I was paying $95 a week, and that was through a company. So, like outside of that, healthcare is about $900 a month in New York, so it's pretty rough.
Yeah, dang. Also, yeah. Like, so you said when you like with your like perfect ideal like public option, like one of the things I found bad like with the ACA was that like it was the individual mandate process. So like, would you just raise taxes? You wouldn't do like the type of thing where you're actually just taxing the people who don't have healthcare?
Well, I would just raise taxes in general, like so that you'd have to kind of have healthcare, I guess. You'd be like paying for it regardless. I think the individual mandate, what it was trying to do, it was trying to say like, hey, listen, if everybody's on health insurance, even people who don't need it now, those healthy people are able to pay and offset unhealthy people. And then of course, as you get older, you're going to be less healthy, but your costs are still going to be manageable because healthy people are still fronting the bill for you. So I was in complete understanding of like the individual mandate. It made perfect sense. I think it's hard to do that again when you're subsidizing private insurers, which is why like it would be so much of a better option to just like create a pure public streamlined option. I mean, it's all going to be expensive. But yeah, no, I mean, I think that like you could probably operate in the sense of like, hey, paying taxes based on your wages, and then having insurance based on your wages if you want to opt into public. That's like one of those smaller points. Like you could be like, okay, everybody has to have healthcare, or you could just tax everybody and say you can get it if you want. If you're making a good amount of money, you're probably going to get like an additional like amount of pay if you get healthcare. But I think that generally speaking, you should probably make it so that everybody has like a form of healthcare.
Yeah, no, I agree. Also, actually, I'm just curious. I don't know if I've thought about this enough, but like, do you think like the taxes, like just raising taxes like you would that be enough for like to do a UBI and like a public option?
Like both together? I mean, that's a good question.
Yeah.
That's a decent question because like people like to pretend that like a fucking like Medicare for all would be so cheap, and it's just that's not true.
I know.
And they go like, yeah, but like, because like I hate this. I hate it when people do this shit. Because like, so people today, there's been like studies like from like prominent like conservative groups that are like, oh, Medicare for all will save us $200 billion a year over what we're doing now. The problem is that's the pure assumption that our drug prices are going to instantly drop to the drug prices of every other country, which is just not going to happen. Like we unfortunately have like drug price abuse here. So we're not going to tank in prices. It's not going to be like, yeah, insulin's going to tank down to whatever the normal level of it should be. It's the unfortunate reality. So those are very generous statistics. And they also don't contextualize people who are like underinsured, right? So it's going to be more expensive. You're going to have to raise taxes. I mean, you would say that those could be generally offset. You can make the argument that would be somewhat offset. You might pay a little bit more, but everybody's insured. You could say it could lead to like a less healthy or more healthy society. I don't know too much. I haven't like flushed out the Medicare for all type of a thing, the Medicare for all plus type of thing. I don't know how much you'd have to raise taxes. I think it could probably would be doable. I would say like UBI independently, I think is like fiscally realistic.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's at first that I was really worried, like hearing about Yang's UBI, because I was like, I don't have no idea like you pay for this, but like it seems pretty like realistic.
Oh,
but, like,
yeah, absolutely.
The two together scare me a little bit.
It could be a problem. Yeah, most people like. I think probably for society, the next step is going to be some kind of like a universal healthcare system. I think that's the next step probably. I mean, like I could definitely be like, I could understand like hey, let's just do UBI and then like you decide if you want healthcare or not. You could do that. I just think that like there are some decent standards that we should set for like a poverty floor. Like a healthcare and a universal basic income, in my opinion, are like the things to do. I think they could be reasonable. I'm just not 100% sure. I do know that like if we like reverse the Trump tax cuts and we implement the UBI, it would only leave us with like $250 to $300 billion a year increase, which we could get by like reasonable, like actually taxing corporations and fucking and like rich people, I would imagine. But I think it's like one of those things where you could spend a little more now and then you could start cutting, because we have so many places where we overspend, like just like policies in the government of like if you don't use it you lose it kind of a thing that forces like the military to spend the extra $50+ billion a year that they have on absolute bullshits, because if they don't, they're going to lose their funding for the next year.
Yeah, no, I think fixing like the loopholes with like the really big companies and then like raising taxes there, I think that could still do a lot. But yeah, that was just one of my like dilemmas with thinking about these things, because I like the idea of having UBI. I like the idea of having a public option healthcare. But like the thing that worries me is that I feel like people who are on that lower end of the spectrum, who are really bad at prioritizing their finances, they wouldn't be able to, get the healthcare they need or whatever.
Yeah, it's
UBI
specifically to healthcare. Yeah, for sure. I know people have brought up the facts like, Papa, like what would happen if somebody got all this UBI money and they just pissed it down the drain? It's like, hey, would you force people to spend it a certain way? It's like, no, let them do their work. Like, I think that a lot of the reason that people are so bad at saving their money is because they have such a small amount of money to save that they just give up. It's one of those things where it's like, if you can save $20 a week, it sounds nice. Like, oh, you just waited a year and you got $1,000. But like, a lot of times you have constant unexpected like expenses. Like it's just constant. It could be like, oh, my car broke down, my phone broke. It could literally be like, I don't have time to eat today. I want to go, like, go to the convenience of being able to go out and get like some fast food. I don't know. It's so unrealistic. But if you give some people like a blanket of money, which would be UBI, I don't think that you would see like horrible expenditures on things. Would people still like buy lottery tickets and shit? Probably, but that's still. But even if you spend your money like shit, you're still pushing your money through the system in a way that's going to get taxed. So your worst case scenario is you're a fucking idiot, but like you're still contributing to the society because you're getting taxed on what you buy. Let's say you buy like 100 cartons of cigarettes, you're still paying taxes on all that shit. So you know what I mean? It is what it is.
Yeah. I've heard that for forever. Is that like it's easy to save, but like, it really isn't. You got all kinds of stuff that comes up like throughout, you know, even a month, not much less a year, you know. But
absolutely.
I'm trying to think of some other stuff here. What do you think about guns? I haven't heard you talk about guns almost at all, so I'm really interested.
I like guns; they're pretty cool.
Yeah,
I think that like I'd like to see. I mean, I guess you just say like common sense gun control implemented. I would also like to see the expansion of guns. I think like a problem with is like people who tend to be like disadvantaged or more prone to criminal activity. So giving like expanding gun usage to people right now is probably not like the most realistic thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But like I'd like to see like the expansion of gun, like, you know, responsible gun usage and like a better gun culture. I think that most people who are trained to use a gun properly are incredibly responsible with their firearms.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like it gets really aggravating for people like us who are like a little more in the middle, or at least it does for me, because it feels like when you have an idea like that, where it's like, I think we should like be really responsible with how like we make gun laws, especially because we like guns. You have people on the right who are like, no, 2A, you know, don't infringe. Or you have people on the left who are like, oh well, you know, moderate Democrat left, where they're like, you're not going far enough. You gotta go.
Well, yeah, there's people that are like on the left that are like, oh, let's just get rid of guns completely. It's like, yeah, there's like a middle ground. Like, there's a way to maintain gun usage in like a safe way, and people don't really want to like push off of it.
Yeah. Skipping there. What do you think of like Biden's? He had like the I think his plan is like, one of them is like ending the manufacturing and selling of like assault rifles, and like under that he includes ARs. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I know AR stands for like something.
Armalite,
yeah, Armalite rifle. I don't like, so I'm not super educated on it. Like my understanding, well, you could probably make the argument that like the reason he's trying to like ban ARs is because it's like public reactionary. People hear like AR and like, oh, it's bad, and he's like, okay, let's ban that. I don't agree if that's the reason he's doing it. I do agree with trying to get like fully automatic guns and like large magazines out of the market. I don't think that we really need those things for like general consumption. I'm fine with those. Like, I'm fine with like his buyback, his like voluntary buybacks. I don't see an issue with those.
Okay. Maybe we'll disagree a little more than I thought. Then I see one of the things, like as far as like the AR, like I'm okay with like, I'm open to the idea of like, especially because it already is, fully automatic guns being regulated, or you know, not being sold anymore.
You're not okay with it, or?
No, I'm open to that idea. I'm a little hesitant because, you know, I guess for what the 2A stood for originally, but I can understand how that gets very, very bad very quickly if it's not regulated correctly. But as far as like semi-automatic guns like the ARs, I feel like they're not as big of a threat, especially because they're not really that used that often in like really, you know, important like big shootings or whatever. And so I don't know if I would agree with that necessarily. But
with the AR specifically, or the automatic rifles?
AR specifically.
Yeah, well, that's why I said like if the only reason that he wants to ban them is like public reactionary, like people think they're bad, so they should be banned. Like, yeah, I don't agree with that.
Oh, okay.
That's why I said it, because it does seem like there's some like public reactionary, like, oh, ARs are bad, and like, but people don't substantiate it. They just associate the AR with assault rifle. It's like, oh, AR-15s are bad because of that. Like, yeah, no, I don't think that we should be like I don't think that we should be banning guns just because people don't want them. That we should have like a reasonable reason to not want them, which would be like, you know, like high capacity magazines or like fully automatic rifles. I don't know that I don't know that I'm necessarily open to people having fully automatic rifles.
Okay, I must have I think I misinterpreted them, because no,
I speak like, sometimes I speak quickly. So
no, you're good. But then the buyback, that part I disagree. I think even a little bit more, because I'm definitely okay. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, they're voluntary buybacks.
No, I know. I'm okay with the voluntary buyback, actually. But the place I have an issue with is that it seems as though, or at least this is what he says, is that like, if you don't do the buyback, then you have to register your guns.
Sure, yeah.
That are, I guess, that aren't registered, and that can add up. I think the minimum is like $200, and it seems like that's going to impact like low income families. Like,
oh, are you saying that like, so you're fine with the registering? You just don't like that cost it would be to register?
Yeah. I mean, like, if the cost wasn't there, I don't think that's as big of a deal. The problem is it seems is like the government or his plan is basically saying like, give us your guns, or we're going to make you like have to pay for your guns. Which is going to affect like, disproportionately, it's going to affect like poor people or poor gun owners, which is, I think is even like a bigger threat right now, because like, it seems like this year we have like 2020, not this year now, but it seemed like 2020 we had like the biggest, increase in gun ownership, especially among among Black Americans. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. I understand what you're saying. Oh my God, these fucking dogs. That's like, because I think that everybody should have to have their guns like registered, but I do understand like it can be very expensive. Like I'm looking for like applications of like licenses, and they can be very expensive here depending on the gun that you have. I'd say that just as like a general rule of thumb, we should absolutely have all guns registered. I mean, I'm sure we could come up with something like, if it's that big of an issue, of like a one-time subsidy for current gun owners, and then moving forward, like, okay, like, oh, you get a tax write-off if you write off all your guns this year, you get a tax write-off at the end of the year for the amount of money that you spent to register your guns, let's say, like something like that. I think I would be fine with that, because we don't currently have the standard in many areas where you have to register a gun. So let's make it at the standard, and let's give people a break who haven't registered their guns. And then moving forward, if you want another firearm, you're going to have to register it before you buy it or whatever.
I wouldn't. Okay, as far as registering guns, I wouldn't necessarily make this case, because I don't know if I would 100% agree with it, because I just haven't thought through it enough. But it is a little tempting, because I've heard this argument a few times, that like I feel like there is a downside to having all guns registered, specifically for the case that, like, if crap does hit the fan, the government wants to take people's guns away. They know exactly who to go to. You know what I mean? And they can just, like, if they know you have like X amount of pistols, some ARs, shotguns, they can like roll up with the SWAT team and be like, "Yo, bro, give us."
They could, because I'm somebody who comes from the perspective that I think people should be able to have guns, because I think that like the government should have a healthy amount of fear for its citizens. I don't. It's like, I understand where you're coming from, so it's like a tough. It's a tough line to like play. But like, yeah, no, I'm fine with like the registering of it. Generally speaking, like, I understand like the animosity, or the animosity, oh my God, the anonymous. Oh my, I can't speak. I understand wanting to remain anonymous. I can't fucking speak. I can't use big words. When you have guns, because you're afraid like the government like take them, it could be a reasonable fear. I still do think that like we should have like guns registered. I think that we could probably mimic like our gun usage in a way that we like our gun licenses in a way that we have driver's licenses. And I think could probably reduce crimes. I don't think there's an issue with registering them. I would imagine if you had like a wide scale like governmental like take back of guns, that people would be like, "Ah, fuck that," and that's when they would revolt. So I don't know that would necessarily happen, but it could happen. But I don't think it would.
No, yeah, I understand that, and like I said, I'm steel manning a bit, because I don't necessarily agree with that completely. But
that's fine, yeah.
It's a tempting argument. I don't have too much else. What do you think about COVID like going on forward?
I mean, I think that like we need to. I think that we need to. I honestly am fine with like moving forward, making sure that we're safe. I'm fine with like partial lockdowns. I think that we probably could have done more in the beginning, which is why it's so bad. But I also think that like we're kind of at a spot where it was going to be pretty bad at this point, regardless. But yeah, no, I'm fine with lockdowns. Like, I think that mass usage needs to be encouraged. I think that social distancing needs to be occurred. These are more social than anything else. I think that like we need like barriers when in like restaurants and whatnot, or like the plexiglass barriers, like things that we can do to slowly open back up. I think that we have to kind of leverage the mental health of individuals versus the spread of COVID in a way that's like practical, because like to an extent we're going to have some spread of COVID. We shouldn't advocate for it. But like if we can responsibly open back up, it would like mitigate it and cut it down, because there are a lot of people, especially young people, who are having like tremendous healthcare problems or mental health problems right now because they're so boxed up. For older people, I don't think that they care as much, especially if you go to work and you come home. That's a decent social, like enough for like an older individual to be like, whatever, I don't give a fuck. But you're seeing like a lot of young kids like have like a tremendous negative impact, and it's even when it comes to their schooling. Like kids seem to be doing very poorly online. It's hard to self-motivate and do online classes.
Yeah, it seems like old people don't care as much, especially because most of them are
like, I'm not too affected by it.
Already sitting at their home anyway.
Yeah, right.
But would you be? Yeah, that was the other question. Was like, do you think like another lockdown, like hard lockdown? Because I think Biden might have talked about it, but I'm not for sure.
He might have, like, if it was necessary. I mean, if it was necessary, sure, yeah, it would be fun.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what a hard lockdown is like in New York. I think right now we have like 1/2 capacity, and they have a 10 o'clock curfew for businesses. You know, and then you'd advocate. There's obviously you can't go into a restaurant without like a mask on. I think those are fine policies. I think that those could be a lot. I mean, I don't know how much more we could do, or if it's feasible. If we really had to, sure, I'd be open to like a full shutdown for a while again if it really needed to happen. But I think that like a big problem was like socially. I think that if Trump had advocated for mask usage better and like social distancing and had pressed states to be more responsible, then we would have seen like smaller numbers. Yeah,
true. Yeah, and if, I mean, you know, he probably wouldn't have gotten COVID himself. But
yeah, for sure.
I feel like, so I'm you know, pretty in agreement with most of those things. One of the things though, I feel like at some point we're, you know, basically going to be living with this, you know, thing for a while. And so, go ahead.
No, sure, go ahead. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, it's all good. I was just going to say, like, and so like once you know, once the vaccine is like super readily available, a lot of people have gotten it. Like, do you think at that point we can finally be like, all right, you know, it's time to chill?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to say. Like, you know, that we're kind of like waiting until we have like a viable vaccine. It seems like we do. I'm a little skeptical because it was a little quick. I don't know how I feel about it personally. I don't mean to be like a fucking I'm not an anti-vaxxer. Right. Like, I get the flu shot regularly. This one particular vaccine makes me nervous due to like the speed of implementation. I honestly probably won't take it. I'll probably just, and if they go, hey, if you don't get the vaccine, you have to undergo more specific stipulations. Okay, like I'll just take that. I understand, but like it's a little quick for me. But I think that's where we're trying to get to a point where we have like a solid like vaccine readily available for people, so that it becomes like the flu, where it's like, okay, everybody's got the fucking COVID vaccine. It is what it is.
Yeah, I totally understand being a little bit more skeptical of this one. I feel like our health services have gotten a lot better at like doing this type of stuff, but like there's a lot of instances, or at least a few instances in the past, where like really rushed vaccines have caused like much more harm than good.
Yeah, and that's what I'm a little bit worried about. You know, it's the natural skeptic in me.
Yeah, sure. It's an interesting one. It seems like there's people from both sides having actually different views than what they generally would. It seems like I've found left-leaning people are like, you know, I'm a little skeptical because of how fast. And then there's people on the right who are like, you know, it's not a big deal. I just want to get this over with.
Yeah, right. Because people want to get back to work and whatnot. And like, exactly. I think the government did a kind of a poor job at like providing relief. But you know, that's a whole thing.
I guess like one more thing, cops. I don't know. I don't think we'll disagree with like on cops at all as far as like reforming or whatever. I watched your video talking about Hassan, and I loved it because this is one of the things that I've talked about on my channel like a ton, is that like it feels like the left's messaging is so terrible, like with like defund the police or whatever. It's like really, really cringe, and it's aggravating. But like
yeah, it is.
what's some solutions that like you think would be good like for reforming?
I think that the people, okay, well, it's hard to say because some people just shout defund the police because they're fucking stupid. But so people like who have a flesh, like okay, like Hassan for instance, defund means to him generally is decent, like more accountability, body cameras, etc. The issue I have with defunding the police is two things. One, its focus is far too much on hurting the police. Like I don't really care necessarily how much money the police get. I care about implementing the solution. So even if we could say, hey, listen, there are some police departments that could probably lose some money to be reallocated. But there's also going to be police departments that need money. Like New York could probably have they spend like $6 billion. I don't know. They spend billions of dollars. They spend a lot. I don't remember how much we spend in New York. It might be $100 billion. I don't know. We spend a lot of money in New York on cops. We could probably take some of that money and reallocate it. But like fucking Alabama, I very highly doubt has the finances to like reallocate. So when you're gonna like generalize like that, defunding is horrible. It focuses too much on trying to hurt the police rather than like the reform. I want the reform first and the scale back later because I don't really care about the money as much as I care about the implementation of solutions and like things like body cameras, which I think would be massive. Like accountability cameras. That's where I come from more than anything else. But then there's also an issue of palatability. Like so I worked like a job for 10 and a half years before I started doing this. And when you work like 40 plus hours a week and you hear something like defund the police, you already don't have the mental energy to like sit there and like dissect what that means. So you're going to be like, defund the police, go fuck yourself. No one's going to listen to that. And it's justifiable because the people who are working 48 plus hours a week, they don't want to be heavily engaged in politics because they're paying their taxes for other people to figure out like the big stuff. And then they want to like listen to people. Right. So like, if you said reform the police to an average American, they'll be like, oh, okay, like that, I can be on board. Like if you said reform the police, we need body cameras and shit, nobody's going to be like, no one's going to say that. They'll be like, oh, body cameras make sense to me. Like, because there's like, how do you fuck it up? Like you have a body camera. It's good for the police. Right. It'll protect the police if they're in the right or the person that the police are predatorizing if they're in the wrong. And so like reform instantly will get people like, oh, okay, like that makes sense. And they'll be more positive to it. But defund, like not only do you have to try to wrap people's minds around what defund actually means, but it still actually means, it just still prioritizes taking money from the police, which is just dumb. Most people like police. Most black people like police. Like people like police. Like, you know, there's lower favorability levels for like black people, of course, but like they like the police. Like if you go into like an impoverished black area and say, hey, should we get rid of the police? Most people are gonna be like, no, we have a lot of crime here. Like it's not like a hot take to be like, let's focus on the reformation first. Like it's just crazy.
Yeah, no, it's super aggravating to hear people like Hassan like talk about this because like he gets really mad too, which is so stupid because like obviously he's, you know, one of these guys that's like so big on the working class, but he
doesn't understand the working class.
Yeah, exactly. You say something like defund the police to someone who's, you know, working class, and they're going to be like, "You're an idiot." Like,
yeah,
it feels like when you go from each lefty to the next, it feels like all of them have a different understanding of what even defund the police means. It's like not unified at all.
No, for sure.
But yeah, and I guess one of the other aggravating things is that like even like you said, reforming actually, it feels like you're gonna have to, you know, talk about it like on a local level, you know,
like state by state basis. Yeah,
it's gonna be totally different for each place. Especially because like defund, like I feel like it implies that you're taking money away and or lowering the budget of the police, which doesn't seem to line up with like some of the things that we want to do for the police. Like I think body cameras, they're like super great. They're, you know, they're really favorable and they do a lot of good, but like they cost like
a lot of money. A lot of money. If you want to talk like implement implicit bias training, like you need to get people to do that. Like I understand that like, hey, let's put more money into social services, but then also like, I don't know. And this is one of the things why I'm a UBI guy. I don't know how much bang for your buck you get out of social service implementation. Because like, okay, like the biggest reason that people do things wrong is because they don't have the opportunity to do things right. So we're gonna like, hey, here's somebody that you could talk to in case you fuck up. And it's like, well, what if we just gave somebody the means to not fuck up? And that's kind of like, so we could even talk about like how great would it be to expand social services versus having a police officer. It's like, you know, and then of course there's people who even, and Hassan, somebody who seems to be like a passive supporter of just completely dismantling the police and in favor of a new type of police system. And it's like, what the I don't understand the new age idea of deconstructing current things that exist just to re-implement them in a different way that's going to end up being the exact same. It's just so bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, even with that, I mean, like it's going to, I feel like it's going to fly in the face of, because like I think it's Camden, New Jersey. They basically did just that, right? They like abolished and then recreated the police. But even when they did that, they were spending a few million more every year in their budget than they were before they abolished it. And so like it even doesn't even work out then. And so people just don't like.
Hold on, somebody
aren't going to understand from me.
Somebody said body cams work so well for Breonna Taylor. I don't mean to be rude. I just wanted to pretext this. The Breonna Taylor situation fires me up because of how fucked up it was. There were no fucking body cameras in the Breonna Taylor situation. Please don't speak from an uneducated perspective. There were none of the police officers that shot Breonna Taylor, all right, a working class American citizen, were wearing body cameras. So don't say dumb shit like that, because it's so infuriating how fucking annoying this, like, the Breonna Taylor situation is so fucked up. Like, this is a woman who was like a contributing woman, a contributing American to society, who was like working like a legitimate job as like a fucking EMT or something. And like they implemented a no-knock warrant, which just on foundationally is horrible, which you should never have no-knock warrants. But then they were told to knock and announce themselves, which they're supposed to announce themselves. So one of the 12 witnesses even heard an announcement. They barged into an apartment, and then a man wielding a legally obtained firearm to defend himself shot at them. And then his Breonna Taylor was killed. Wasn't there body cam footage? No, it was after. It was the fucking people who came in after. It was like the SWAT team that came in after she was killed by the police. And then on top of that, the entire warrant was based on like this idea that like there was a confirmation of drugs being sent in the mail to Breonna Taylor, which was never substantiated by the post office. So like this was something that even the president of the police union in that area said should have never been executed in the first place, on top of the fact that they already knew where the guy was and she was a low priority individual. So like that whole situation is fucked.
True.
And like it's insane, and like conservatives don't give a fuck about, and I don't understand it, because like it's illegal. Like that is a situation of like police abuse. That's where I would say, yeah, like you have every right to defend yourself. Like the police, that would be the police would be the tyrannical government in that situation, and you had somebody defend themselves with a gun, and you're going to give them shit for having a legally obtained firearm.
Yeah, it feels like there was a lot of stuff that was like left out about that case that or it feels like people spread some stuff about that case that wasn't necessarily true. I've heard that multiple times, that like there was body cams, but like there just wasn't.
The SWAT team or whatever that came in after had body cams. So that's what it was. I'm right here. I'm gonna like move for like 2 seconds. Keep going.
No, I was just wondering. Well, I was gonna ask, but you're gone. Do you know like if they like have body cams at that station, or did they specifically take them off?
So they were in street clothes, so they didn't have to wear it.
Oh yes, that's right. I don't know as much about the case, but I knew a few things. So that's
no, yeah. I think that like in general we should be having like body cams. Like I understand like undercover police officers can't have a body cam because it could arouse suspicion, but like that's not undercover. They were in SWAT. They were in like Kevlar vests and street clothes. Like you're not fooling anybody.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I agree. And it looks really bad on them anyway. I don't know what happened. I don't know if you know, but I don't know what happened with them afterwards or whatever. But it seems pretty scummy.
Like all the police got off, and like listen, maybe you'd say, okay, I think the police executed very poorly. The only person who got charged was somebody who shot through a wall and almost hurt somebody in the next room.
Right.
The biggest I think issue though is like the biggest fuck up here. Well, there was definitely fuck up on the ground with like the lack of announcement, but the biggest fuck up was even the execute, like just the writing up of the warrant in the first place, and the judge, whoever like wrote it up on like on the police side, nobody got anything. Like they scapegoated the fuck out of those police officers, and then nothing happened. We got no reform or anything. It's insane. This woman died.
Yeah, messed up. But yeah. No, I agree with pretty much everything that you would say on cops. I like talking about that stuff. It's pretty interesting. Oh, sorry, I didn't know if you were gonna say something.
No.
Okay. I guess there was only one other thing I was gonna talk about, and it's a little memey, but
okay.
I know this whole stuff with the Kia Soul.
Oh, sure. Yeah, the Kia Soul slander. Yep.
Yeah, no, I wanted to I guess sympathize with you a little bit because
did you have a Kia Soul?
No, I don't have a I don't have a Kia Soul, but my family owns a Prius, and it's like literally, it's so awesome. I own a Jeep, and I love the Jeep, but man, the Prius is like dope because like it looks really stupid, and I know a lot of people make fun, but like gas mileage is good, comfortable.
Yeah, I get like. Depends on it depends like if I'm sitting in the car a lot, but I get like at least like it's like if I'm in the colder weather it's like 25 because I wait a little longer to like warm my car up and whatnot. But like solid 30, like when I do long trips, 30 to 33 miles to gallon, man, really not that bad. Like Kias get a bad name, but I asked like all the mechanics because I used to work at like a bus company. I asked all the mechanics like, yeah, Kias are good, like they're inexpensive, the quality's gone up because they used to be so shit, and like so right now you get a decent Kia. I was like, okay, and I haven't had a problem with it. I paid like $17,500 for the car. I've had it for a couple of years now. Yeah. I've had no like real issues with it.
Yeah, I know. And honestly, I think these cars like Kia Soul and Prius, I think they're made to look a little uglier.
Sure.
Because
like the way they look.
They need to bring the price down since they have such good gas mileage. Yeah, you get some pros, you get some cons.
I don't care about the Kia Soul is surprisingly spacious at least in like the front. For someone like me, which is a puller. I was like, I want an economy car that's decent with enough space for me to be comfortable in it. And like the Kia Soul, I'm more comfortable in my Kia Soul than I was in my Ford Edge. So, I'm fine with it. I like the car. I'll probably get another Kia. I don't give a fuck. The Kia Soul slander is like funny to me.
It's
just like. My fucking mentions are full of Kia Soul shit. It makes it sometimes hard for me to talk about like issues because I like to look through my comments and be like, hey, what's going on here? And then like it's like, oh, Kia Soul. Like, fuck you, bro. Holy shit. Shut the fuck up. It's funny, but then like it's funny, and then it's just like, God damn it, I want content, because that weirdly enough, TikTok is my main source of income right now. So I want fucking content.
Really? Wait, what about Twitch? Is it just ranking lower than TikTok for you as far as income?
Right now, yeah. Right now it is.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Dang. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, no, it trust me, it came at the perfect time. So when I first started doing Twitch, I was making like a lot of money on Twitch because like I was new. Donald Trump was still there, but it's like, oh, let me hear what you have to say. Slowly, it started to like dial towards like a lot more YouTube money. Like so, I was making like equal YouTube and Twitch money, so I was still making good money. Then towards the end of the year, Trump lost, and it was like I started to like go down a little bit, which I would totally expected. Like I'm a political streamer, so it's like okay. And I would like once Trump lost, I was almost like relieved. I'm like, okay, we can all chill the fuck out, right? Like it's like at one point I have 735 subs. Somebody said I used to have like 1,400 subs. So like I was like booming at a certain point. A lot of it was from like Gemini. Because like people are like, oh, thank you so much. Like when they did the Tony Lopez thing, people were like upset that I didn't Gemini him, but like totally different circumstance. I have YouTube videos about it. But then like randomly, I stopped doing stitches and duets on TikTok, and you make like 1/10 of the amount of money on stitches and duets. So I started to make normal content. I started to get like very much like boost in the algorithm with the whole Brandon Bernard situation. So like now I'm seeing 2 to 4 million views a day, and I'm making. Making okay, like you. I don't know. Are you in the creator fund? I don't know if.
Yeah, I am, but man, I make very little. I got like, I got for a while I was, I've leaned in the way I do, right now for a while. Like I'm pretty socially liberal, but like economically capitalist. But earlier on in the year, I was kind of more on a lefty arc for the most part. But I like I try to still like make takes that were like middle of the road. But once the election came up, and especially with all this like fraud allegation stuff, I kind of went more on a righty arc. And man, my followers did not like it. And so I was gaining followers, but I was also losing followers. So I've been stagnant for like the longest time.
I lost a ton of followers, and I got more I lost like 38,000 followers over Brandon Bernard. Yeah.
Holy crap.
And it's understandable because like it was. I don't think the take was inherently wrong, but like how I could have been more like when I said like, oh, the reform doesn't matter. I could have been like, listen, I think that we've hit a point like where once you like are complicit in murder, I don't think that the reform is like I don't really, the reform isn't relevant to me anymore because you can't reform to release, right? I contextualize that later, but of course, shit happens. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it's one of those things where like you're never gonna like say the perfect thing. Even now, my followers fluctuate so heavily. Like I made, you know who the teacher Luke is, the guy that says like bigoted terms and pretends that he's just educating people on what they mean in like Taiwan.
I haven't seen any of his videos, but I think I skimmed past one of your videos earlier and saw that you were talking about it, but I don't know what the context was.
People were okay. So basically, like he says, he says the full N word, the full C word, which is a derogatory term for like obviously I'm not going to say them for like Asian people. He says the F slur and I guess you'd say the R slur, and he says them in ways where he's like, oh well, I am. He's white, but he's like, I teach people English in non-English countries, and they need to hear these terms. The biggest problem is a couple of things. One, when he brings the words up, he doesn't give the double meaning. Like, so for instance, what word can I say? We'll say retard, because I can like retard is okay. He'll be like, oh, retard means to slow down, whatever. In all English-speaking countries, you know that the word retard is like a derogatory slur. You're not contextualizing that it is in those countries, and you're not giving a point of reference to people who are native to whatever language. So if they speak, I don't know languages, I'm very ignorant. Let's say that I don't know if Taiwanese is a language. I could, maybe it is. I'm fucking stupid. But it's not like he's saying like, hey, this word retard, and this is what it is in English, and then in Taiwanese is this word. You're not giving points of reference, so you're not even educating people. And the only words that he educates people on are bigoted slurs. So you're not an educator, you're an asshole. And then he's like, well, my students watch my TikToks. Put them up on YouTube unlisted and fucking email it to them on a mass email list. There's so many other ways that you could go. He even admits in his videos, yeah, my students don't really see the content anymore because my videos were picked up by English speakers. Well, no shit, because a lot of young dumb kids think that it's funny for you to say the N-word multiple times in a video and get away with it. And that's all it is. It's like literal antagonism, and like people equate it to like Nick Foster, but at least Nick Foster is honest about trolling.
Yeah.
He's not gaslighting kids into be like, I'm being educational by saying bigoted terms.
I don't know. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say. I don't know how he can make like. It seems so obvious. I don't know how people like can like do something like that and act like it's not antagonistic. Like you have no other purpose.
People want to believe it, and they're like, yeah, but not English isn't the only. English-speaking countries aren't the only countries. It's like, motherfucker, he's teaching English. It doesn't matter what other countries exist. He's teaching English. If you're educating somebody on how to speak English, you would assume you're educating them on how to speak to people who are English. So why would you make it common vernacular to say the word retard?
Yeah.
It's none of his so like he's being incredibly bigoted, like a real worthless piece of shit. And people believe him, and it's like it is like I would say on like the tone of gaslighting, and like nobody, like people are too afraid to go after him because like they're afraid. Like my fans are like, Papa, you're an idiot. I'm like, fuck you. You're no offense. You can disagree, which is fine. But if you're gonna say that you're like, if you're gonna be like, oh, Papa, you're just totally uneducated on this, and say like, shut your fucking mouth. Like you don't know a goddamn thing. Like
if he was educating, I feel like he would be like still at least at the very least giving context within the English language
and points of reference. Context and points of reference, and doing more than just bigoted double meaning slurs. Like he doesn't teach people on what the fucking word carrot is. He teaches people on what like the fucking N-word is. It's like we don't necessarily need to know that as much as just like what is a pencil. Like you're teaching derogatory slurs.
Yeah, that's messed up.
So yeah, like my point was like I lost followers over that because like I'm so concerned. I'm at a point like I don't even give a fuck anymore. Like
it seems like not even a hot take, but
it's not. It's just like I have some. I don't mind conservatives, but I have some like very like racist conservative, like a lot of young dumb kids. So they follow me because they like to see my like some of my jokes. But then like I put social stuff up there, and then you just I disagree. You could disagree, and if you're gonna unfollow me, then I don't give a singular fuck. But people need to learn. People need to learn that you can make like fun, like edgy jokes. That doesn't mean that you hate like a particular group. Like just because I make a joke that pokes fun at like gay people doesn't mean that I like hate gay people. Like it's just a joke. I find jokes normalizing. I think that if we can have like fun, like you know, edgy jokes are fine, like, but generally like harmless jokes that are like just like fun poking at each other, that like that's incredibly galvanizing. That's how I grew up. Everybody
Yeah.
makes jokes, everybody's a little antagonistic, we all have fun, we have thicker
Mhm.
skin. That's what it means to me.
Yeah.
But some of these kids don't see that.
Yeah, no, I understand that, and I agree that like you know, even if you are going to be like edgy, you still need to be like, you need to have a certain filter. Like you need to know what, like, where the line is.
Yeah,
But
right,
like,
sure.
it seems like it's very. I feel like it's very hard. There's a lot of lefties on, like, really, you know, big lefties on TikTok that feel like, you know, I don't know how to explain that type of thing to them. Like, you know, that you can make edgy jokes and not be like an insensitive person. But yeah, I don't know. It's a tough conversation.
Yeah, no, it is, because like you have a lot of people who get offended for other people on the left, and it's like, you know, there's an argument to be made that as a society we need to obviously be less bullying, but then there's an argument to be made that we still need to like not be so sensitive about everything. Like, God forbid somebody makes like a harm, like even on my page, and I lose followers over this. I'm gonna make another video soon. There's this like one black girl who does whiteface, and like it's racist and she shouldn't do it, but like it's not as harmful as like blackface, and it's kind of funny because she looks like a fucking idiot, and people are like, no, Papa, that's not true, this is just as bad. It's like, no, it's not just as bad. Like, you can be like, it's not as bad, like you know it's not as bad, like shut up, like just stop. And people want to be like so intense about everything, but like there's a line. I think, and I do think that the whiteface is like funny because this woman is fucking insane. Do you know the woman I'm talking about?
I have no idea who you're talking about.
I'll probably make a video soon. She's like this black woman who just wears whiteface and like and big like red lips, and she pretends to be white. It's funny to me. It's funny that it's not removed, but like it's not like, while it is racist, like it's not the same level of like racism as if I put blackface on and started to fucking do something, you know?
Yeah, actually, and I think you actually changed my mind on stuff like that, because like you made some video like where you're talking about like there was this guy walking down the street and he saw like a black owned business or whatever. And like a few months ago, I would have been like, yeah, that has to be like some sort of racism. Like it seems like it. But like when you contextualize it like within our system, it totally makes sense. Like this is not going to be the exact same thing as if some white guy put out a sign that says this is a white owned business. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, no, people don't like that. Yeah, you gotta sit and think of like the act versus intention is like totally important. That's that could be the difference between manslaughter and murder, is like your intentions. You know, like if you're driving a car and you don't see somebody, you hit them and kill them, it's awful, but you didn't murder them. But if you fucking gunned the car and you hit them and you wanted them to die, you murdered them. Intention is so important. And like, you could probably make an argument that like, okay, maybe there are signs that say black-owned business that are like, hey, stay away, whitey. But for the most part, I would imagine that the reason you'd say black-owned business is usually to signal other people in the area that like, hey, this is like a small-owned business. Most of the time, a lot of people that like live in black areas are very segregated, and they might be saying like, hey, listen, this is like a small business, support us instead of like fucking Walmart. Or you know, it could be like something like, hey, listen, like we need more money to like continuously circulate through our community, so come shop at our black-owned business. This is, and obviously reversing like systemic racism is like, in my opinion, almost solely, or if not like the most important factor, is to get more money to black people. So like, hey, this is a signal, like, hey, come shop here. On the other side, if you have somebody that says white-owned business, like the only reason that they're going to say white-owned business is either going to be reactionary to that TikTok that I made, or because they're like, hey, white people come here. And then there's also the other factor of like black comfortability going into supermarkets, right? Or into stores. Like whether like, you know, there's a lot of times if you're black and you go into a store, you get followed. Now, right here, it could be as simple as like, hey, black-owned business, you can be comfortable to shop here as a black person. There's really no businesses that white people can't shop comfortably other than black-owned businesses, which are a minority. So like, it comes to like the reasons and the intentions behind these signs. And then also some people are saying that like they put those signs up because I guess like Black Lives, like maybe Antifa, but when there's protests, sometimes like, well, they could destroy businesses. Maybe it has to do with like, hey, don't destroy our black-owned business, which I also agree with. And on that topic, really quick, I'm not for looting or rioting. I think it's terrible. I think it's the worst thing in the, like, it's terrible. It doesn't help your message. But if you're gonna vandalize anything, if your issue is with the government, don't do it. But go light a police station or or go light the post office on fire. You shouldn't don't do that. But like, Target has nothing to do with the government. So go light a fucking gas station, not a gas station. Go destroy UPS or something, you know, or USPS. Like, don't do that. But like, at least direct your angers at the direction that you want it to be directed at. hurt the government, not local businesses.
Yeah, no, dude, I've talked about that quite a few times. This seems like such a weird conversation, because it's like it actually is really polarizing in our country, like, this last year, which seems so weird, because I feel like it's not a hot take, it's not controversial to be like, you shouldn't like destroy people's businesses, even if you don't like believe in property rights.
You shouldn't.
Yeah, even if you don't believe in property rights, like this is your guys' community, and like you're destroying it, like it doesn't make sense. But yeah, I've said that on my channel too. Like, if you're going to do anything, burn down a police station.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. But if you're going to do something, it makes the most sense. Somebody said, what is BLM trying to do? BLM is simply trying to promote better interactions between police officers and Black Americans. Like, that's really all BLM tries to do. The messaging has gone like ballistic, because like anytime like a Black person's killed by another Black person, like, well, why does BLM matter now? And it's like, well, BLM is specifically trying to deal with police interactions. If you think that there's and what's funny to me is like when white people get killed by cops and they're like, what about this? White lives matter. So go make white lives matter and go fight against police brutality of white people. Because you know what? There are issues where the police like are just in general a little bit too, I don't know, authoritarian. So like, yeah, go make a white lives matter and fight against police brutality. Or better yet, support Black Lives Matter, because the sweeping reform from BLM that has a positive impact on the Black community is going to have the same positive impact on white communities. Because body cameras don't give a shit about their color. It's not like the body camera just doesn't detect white people. It's body cameras for everybody. So go to support BLM, or go like create your own White Lives Matter that centralizes around like police reform. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. there's so much like the intent behind BLM, and like most of the protests is like super, super good. Like I feel like I feel like the people who get like upset with BLM are like mainly talking about like, actually I think you talked about it in a video where someone said BLM is a trend. Like, I mean, there's absolutely truth to that when it comes to social media. I don't know if you saw, there's this Netflix like mockumentary that came out called Death to 2020, and they actually made fun of that, and was like, oh yeah, I'm an ally, I like post on Instagram black screens, and I only use black emojis, and and it's like, yeah, of course, like,
what does that do for anybody?
Exactly. Like, of course, there's like some truth to like the trend part, like, but you can't deny like that we need reform, and that's something that we could all agree on.
And so, people don't give a fuck anymore. People stopped caring. Like, all these people on the internet stopped caring. And I think it's because like, I think there's a couple. One of this because the trend isn't popular enough to garner views, which is all I talked about during the summer. I was like, you guys are literally tokenizing Black issues. You don't give a fuck about BLM. Sure. I'm still consistently talk about like positivity of BLM, but also the performative activists who do talk about BLM, which isn't all of them, they do it in like an incredibly antagonistic way towards conservatives. Like, they don't focus on the message. Like, the reason why nobody, like a lot of people in my chat, don't know what BLM means outside of after I actually explain it, is because the performative activists who weaponize BLM use it in a hateful way, and they don't explain what it means. They're just like, Black Lives Matter. It's like, well, so what's the goal? Oh, I don't know. They don't talk about the goal. They just keep saying, well, Black people matter. I was like, no shit. But like, why is BLM a thing? And it's because they're dealing with interactions between police. But people don't want to talk about that. They just want to they want to just fucking perform, and they want to look good. They want the followers on TikTok. They want the views. They're fucking annoying.
Yeah, and not only that, like you got the trend part, but then I feel like you also have like kind of like what we were talking about with the writing, is that like you have people who take it so far as to like, you're not focused so much on helping Black communities as much as you are focused on hating police, kind of like eat the rich, stuff like that.
No, but you're totally right. Like, a lot of the movements, like the fucking like the communist movement or whatever, it's much more focused on hurting the people who are in like some kind of a power perspective, rather than helping people who aren't. And it's like always like, oh, like that's like, oh, we need to get rid of communism because like what is it? The profit is inherently wrong, and this, that, and the other thing. Is like, okay, but what if we focused on like real change we could actually implement that helps poor people? No. We need to hurt the rich people more than helping the poor. I don't give a fuck about rich people at all. I don't care about billionaires. I care about impoverished people. Now, of course, removing or reducing poverty means you're going to have to reduce how rich other people are, but I'm more focused on the removing of poverty before like the reduction of billionaires. Like, that's, and like, because I want like I don't give a fuck about, like, I care more about the people who are being impacted rather than the some people who have it like really well. Like, yeah, we need to reduce like the wealth hoarding, but like focus on the people who need it more than like the performance and the hatred against people who are in like these power positions.
Yeah, and then it gets really aggravating too because like these people, a lot of these people they'll like try to make an argument against like harm reduction where you'll be like, well, why can't we like try and make some like, pragmatic, like meaningful change right now?
Mhm.
Like, I don't know, public option, because that seems like the most viable or whatever. And they're like, no, we got to do Bernie's plan. We got to go extreme, bro. And it's like, you won't ever get that passed, and like you're only going to be hurting like these people that you're trying to help.
Yeah, no,
like,
I had a conversation with like a communist kid, and I was like, hey, okay, so I'm a UBI guy, whatever. So I was like, hey, what if we implemented universal basic income right now, and like individual healthcare, private option, blah blah blah. He's like, no, we shouldn't do those things because it would make people more complacent. I'm like, yeah, people would get more complacent because they would be happier. Like they wouldn't have so many issues associated with being oppressed if they were less oppressed, right? And he's like, no, we shouldn't do that. And I'm like, why? He's like, because it just made, it's like, he's like, whatever I just said, like fucking apathy or whatever the fuck I just said isn't the equivalent to happiness. I'm like, no, but in this situation, like people are going to be like less upset, so they're going to be happier. And then he's like, no, we need to keep the way the way they are because we should have like a revolution. I'm like, no, like what? No, it's never gonna work.
Right. Like, and I feel it's also silly because like they act like you can't progress towards something like that. Like I would never advocate for like actually going like full blown, crazy communist or whatever, because I just don't necessarily think it works. But like the idea that we can't progress further towards that is really silly. Like ACA was a massive step, and we're already talking about expanding it. Like it's like stuff like that is so obvious to like you can progress through time, and like we have been. I don't know.
No, yeah, no. Like so, I just want to tell people who are communists, I'm like, your worldview is unrealistic right now, 100%. I don't think it will ever be realistic, but if it's going to become realistic, it's not going to be until we implement the things that like I want to implement overall, even if it's not UBI. But you understand, like wealth redistribution in a positive way. So, like, take the step forward because you need to recondition society and people in it to not be selfish. But people are inherently selfish. I don't think being selfish is, like, the wrong thing. Like, being selfish is the reason that we have abortions, right?
Yeah.
Like, women are like, I can't afford this baby, so I'm not going to have it. That's selfish. But, like, you could argue that that's a positive way of being selfish because that's advocating for the success of that woman. It's a harsh take, but that's, like, being selfish is a good thing, right? Being selfish is, like, when your friend that, like, has constantly taking money from you, it says, can I have $100? And you go, no, I need to pay my bills. Like, that's selfish, but that's positive selfishness, So, like, being selfish is, like, you should be a little bit selfish. You have to play the line between being selfish and being, like, giving, because, like, you don't want to get, because or else people are just going to take everything from you and you're going to fucking die off and you're going to lose your individuality.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I agree. I don't know what else to say about that.
No, but you have to recondition everybody to be super nice people, which I just don't think is ever going to happen. People are fucking dicks. But maybe I'm wrong. We'll see in the next 100 or 2 years, 1 or 2 years.
Maybe. I don't have really anything else to talk about. This was really fun though. I appreciate you letting me come on.
Oh yeah. Anytime. If you ever want to talk about whatever, you just let me know. Pop, like, hey, Papa, I want to talk. If I'm like not busy, I'll pull you in. Like I don't like. Outside of having conversations with people, I play fucking balloons. So, like, if you want to pop in and just ask, even if it's like a 15-minute conversation about something you did or didn't agree with, it doesn't matter. Pop into the chat. Are you in my Twitch chat right now?
Am I in your Twitch chat right now?
Yeah. Do you have a Twitch? You do or don't?
Yeah. I do. I'm not on your stream right now, but I'm following you on Twitch.
Okay. Yeah. Do me a favor. I want to do this because I try to do this for like the creator people in here. Just go to my Twitch chat and like type something into it, and then I'm gonna VIP you.
Oh, one second. Sorry, I had it started playing on accident.
That's fine. How do we feel about Google search not allowing for directions to Washington D.C. and prep for tomorrow's protest? I didn't even know there's a protest tomorrow. Papa's a cutie. There we go. Yeah, this way, like you should be good. Like say something again in the chat.
Oh, say something again.
Yeah, like anything. I can put like the letter A. I don't give a fuck.
Okay.
There you go. So now you got your VIP. So like I should be able to notice your message better.
Okay.
There.
Cool.
So.
All right. Awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks. It was a pleasure here too. Also, one last thing. Sorry,
yeah,
I saw when I was on the stream. I saw the real Megamind. He's actually one of my followers. He's the one who told me to reach out. He said hi, so I just want to say.
Yeah, he's one of like my very very close, like very solid loyal followers. Like Megamind,
awesome.
Ozone, then like Black Diamond. They always like reach out to people. like who want me, I want to have conversation, which is fantastic for me. It makes it so much easier for me.
Yeah, cool.
So I appreciate that he did that too.
Yeah, he's awesome.
And
all right, thanks,
yeah.
Oh.
All right, my man. No, sorry, I was recognizing other people in chat. Yeah, thank you so lot, my man. Take care, all right?
Yeah, you too. See you, man.
I want to say thank you so much, guys, to all my Patreons, and a special shout out to my Papa XL Patreons. Without all you guys, I would just be some fat dude screaming into a microphone. So thank you so much, guys. Mwah, I love you all. I want Papa Gut to pee on my face, but just as a friend. There's nothing weird about that. I want him to pee on my face.